Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's stream. Am I audible and is everyone able to hear me or not? Just checking. Okay.
We should be live.
Yeah, it appears we are live. Cool.
So, welcome everyone. This is Intermediate HTML and CSS. So first, I'll be covering Semantic HTML, and then Sid will be covering some Intermediate CSS, and then I'll be coming back with some CSS animations. If you've got any questions, just leave them in the chat and we'll try to answer them as we go along. Yeah. So when you start to learn HTML and CSS, you probably learn using something like a div for your header, and then if you want to make text bold, I didn't actually add any text, but if you wanted to use text bold, you'd probably use a B tag like that, and if you wanted to underline it, you'd do underline. But that's not a very good way to code because it's not accessible for screen readers and people who don't, it's not very accessible and different browsers may behave differently. So instead, an example of a tag you can use is this M tag here. I'll just zoom in a bit. An M tag stands for emphasis and is generally a replacement for using the I tag to italicize your text. If we take a look at it over here, it's up here. You can see that item 1, item 2, and item 3 are all styled differently because of the tags here. Bold is making it bold, underlined is making it underlined, and emphasized is making it in italics. Emphasized is generally preferred to using the I tag because it's more semantic, which means it's understood by screen readers, and different browsers can display it differently for different people's needs. So instead of using bold, you should use strong. And then for underline, I think you actually do use underline, unless I'm mistaken. But for italics, use emphasize and then bold is strong. And it behaves exactly the same with no difference to the user. It's just more accessible and is a better way to code. As you can see here, we've got strong, underlined, and emphasized. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is headers and footers and mains. It's common to use a div for your header, a div for your main, and then a div for your footer. But that also isn't a very good way to code because everything is inside a div and it's a div is a container. If you use a header tag, then it's much more readable, and when you're reading your code, you can understand what it's doing a lot better. But it is essentially just a fancy div. And as I've said multiple times, it is more accessible to screen readers. And I think I did, yeah, that should be a header there. And then when you're making a nav bar, you can use the nav element, which again, it just makes it more accessible and your code is much easier to read instead of having to figure out what everything does. This is the same with footer. You can use footer tag, and that does exactly the same. But now that is just much easier to read. You got your header, a div for your main content, and a footer for the footer. But what about the main content? We don't need to use a div, we can use a main tag. And this does exactly the same thing, it's just much neater and easier to read. So now if we refresh it, the styles have broken slightly because I didn't change the style sheet. If I just change the style sheet to be semantic, looks like I made a small mistake in the CSS, but you can see that it works pretty much exactly the same and is just a better way to code overall. Are there any questions about that? If we don't have any questions, then I think Sid can show us how to do some CSS. If I just reset the REPL. Oh, that looks like we found a bug with Replit. It's restored our code. There we go.
Hello.
Our footer, etc. parts of the HTML spec. It is, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but footer and header are definitely things that you are supposed to do in HTML. And yeah, it's generally advised to use footer and header, but it isn't necessary. It's just
it's easier for different browsers to process the info. It's like different browsers behave differently when processing different tags. So if everything is a div, it's hard for screen readers or different accessibility things to recognize whether it's supposed to be a footer, a header, or just a different part of your HTML document. But if you're using footer or header or those types of specific tags, the different browsers will recognize it differently and process it in a way that's better for your HTML document.
Yeah.
Okay. So CSS. So I'm going to go ahead and create a style sheet because that is the best way of having CSS in your HTML. It's just easier. And then to link it to your HTML, you just put a link in your head, the href of your style sheet, and then you just put a rel equals style sheet. And as you can see here, there's currently, if you run the REPL, there is currently nothing in the HTML document. So we should go ahead and start creating some stuff to add CSS to. So first off, we could add, every good website always has a title. So to do that, the best tag to use is the H1 tag. That stands for header 1. It's the biggest text you're going to get in un-CSSed HTML, and it's also just the tag that represents big text or titles. And then you can add the title. If you run the REPL, now you just have big title as your tag, as your title in the HTML. My earbud just fell out, and that is very annoying. And so after that, maybe in your CSS, you have a paragraph. So we would use the paragraph tag for that because it's, well, a paragraph. Maybe you have some text that says hello. And then I'm going to go ahead and find some default lorem ipsum to paste into that. That is the placeholder that's been used for text for a very, very long while. I'm not sure since when, but in every single standard template, you're going to get always a paragraph that starts with the word lorem ipsum. So, we have, thank you, Dylan, for that. After your paragraph text, maybe you have a button that leads you to a different link or part of the page. So there are two different types of tags that you can use for this. You can use the button tag, which normally gets plugged into some JavaScript. And then you can say that's button. And sometimes maybe you'll add an ID to it, then add JavaScript that will hear the button click and then do something. And there's two T's to the word button. Sorry, forgot about that. Or you can use the A, which I don't know what that stands for. So that'd be interesting.
It's anchor.
Just anchor?
Anchor tag.
All right. So that one, if you add an href element to it, it'll redirect you to a page on the internet, or if you don't add HTTPS, a file in your REPL, if you're running it on Replit. So if we made a different file, let's say secondlink.html, instead of making the href be https google.com, we could have just said file.html, and that would have linked it to file.html. So if we run it, as Dylan just did, we have some standard HTML. And the HTML doesn't look bad. Actually, it looks terrible. But that's what it'll look like without any styling. So that's about mostly the simple elements. Dylan, if you want to add any more, feel free to do that. But that's the simple elements that you'll see in a standard HTML page. So to style it, there are several things we could do. I think the first thing I want to do is add a font. So I recommend fonts.google.com. That's the best place to get fonts, and they just make it so much easier. And I love the Poppins font. So I'm going to add a link element to the HTML that fonts.google.com has provided me, and that has the style sheet to this Poppins font. And I'm going to use the awesome code formatting feature to format that. And then in the CSS, all I have to do is do the body tag, since in our HTML we have said that, and we defined the body tag. Then in that body tag, we have H1, paragraph, button, and anchor. So in the CSS, we'll say that anything in the body tag has the font family of Poppins. And if Poppins isn't available, it'll default to sans serif. That's why there's a comma and then sans serif. After this comma, you could put anything that you want. In fact, you could just continue going. If Poppins isn't available, then it'll do, I don't know, monospace. That's another default font. And then if there's no monospace, then it'll do sans serif. And anything that's not in quotation marks that you put there has to be provided by the browser. So that has to be a font that's already, the browser has downloaded and doesn't need to fetch from an external link source, or an @import statement, which looks something like, just a second, an @import statement would look like this. And what that does is it's the CSS way of the of fetching a font or external file. But I've already linked it in the HTML, so I don't need to do that. So now we have this amazing Poppins font, and it's looking pretty good. Our HTML is nice, but there's still some things we can add. So if we go to the H1 tag, I think this is a good size for a good title, but there are also different CSS things we can include. For example, the font -weight declaration. What we can do here is maybe we want it to be 100, or you can make it 200, or you can make it 300. And I would totally recommend messing around with those in your free time. But CSS also has bold, bolder, and I think we're going to stick with bold. So now if you run the REPL, Dylan, you can see that the H1 is now bolder than it used to be. And you can mess around with that, comparisons, all of that in the future. It's an excellent way of just creating more emphasis without using the emphasis tag. Or if it's in a separate element and you just want to make it stand out just a little bit. Highly recommend that. Now something...
A quick question about when you were doing the fonts.
Mm-hmm.
Is it generally recommended to use the link tag to import a font or the @import rule?
I recommend the link because it's just the HTML will first do, if you put it before the style sheet, or if you use the pre-connect REL, it's just easier for the HTML to process that. And instead of having the CSS imported, it's faster because HTML is also made for importing. Like it's doing that for style sheets, for script tags, and now for links. If you just add it to the CSS isn't very good at that. And it might be slower on different browsers or different processors of HTML. I don't know. I just prefer doing it in the HTML, but I don't think that's really a big topic or a big thing that'll speed up your website or slow it down or make it uncompatible or whatever. Something that really stands out, though, that really hurts the eye is this default button. It's disgusting. It's gray. It's got no rounded borders, and it's not good. So to style that, what I highly recommend is first you can kind of tell that the font size is smaller than, say, the anchor that's right next to it. So to change that, you use the font size, and let's say we're going to make the font size of everything. I'm assuming this font size is 12 pixels, but I'm not sure. No, it's not. It's 18. Yeah, that looks better. Maybe 16 pixels, actually. Yeah, there we go. So that will make it be the same size as your default paragraph or anchor element. I don't really like that gray background, neither do I like the border. So to change that, I can use border, and maybe I want it to be 1 pixel. That's the border weight, so how thick your border is going to be. And you can say solid, or you can say dashed. And I know there's one other thing that I forgot, but I want it to be solid, and I would like it to be black. So then if you run it, you see that the border is black. Now that's also the default thing, but I could make it light blue, for example. And you can see that when you run the REPL, the border is now light blue. Another thing that I don't like is the background. That's a very simple background, and it doesn't really fit in. So maybe we can make it white to match the page color. Another thing is sometimes 1 pixel. This first here, 1 pixel, that's the weight, as I said. So we can make it 2.5 pixels, and you can see that the border is slightly thicker. Next, you can see that it's all straight edges, and sometimes that works well on some websites, but most of the time it does not look very nice. So you can use the border-radius statement declaration. And if you want it to be a circle, you can say 50%. I'd also recommend changing the width and the height to the same value so it actually looks like a circle. But this isn't a circle. So announce a nice rounded would be 10 pixels. I recommend that. But this button is a little small and not very high. So I think 5 pixels would be the right value. So as you can see, if you run the REPL, that this button it's nice, but nothing happens when I hover over it, and it doesn't look very nice. So the first thing I'm going to do is change this light blue to black. And maybe change the background to light gray. And CSS has a bunch of predefined values for colors, so definitely worth checking out. Not reading an entire article on them because there are way too many, but definitely worth looking at what colors are available. Also, since Replit has autocomplete, you can type like yellow and it'll have yellow, or dark, and it'll give you a list of every single dark color that it has. But this is the fun part where you can add hover. Something happens on hover. So you're going to put this colon and you're going to write hover. So now what the CSS is doing is it's looking at button, and after that's colon, your action is hover. So now it knows, okay, so on hover, what are we going to do? I'm going to say we're going to make the cursor, we can make it a pointer. Now there are a bunch of different cursor values. There's resize W, resize E, there's drag, there's dragging, there's auto, but pointer is the one that you'll see on anchor elements or link elements. That's the one where your mouse it's showing that it's ready to interact with this element. That's what I highly recommend. Whenever there's an element that you want the user to click on or know that they can click on it, it's good to have the pointer for the cursor so they know, okay, I can click that and something might happen. The next thing is to add some cool little interactivity. We can maybe change the background to black and change the color of the font to white. Don't ask me why it's not font color and it's just color, because normally like font dash size, font dash weight, font dash family. If I was making CSS, I would have made it font dash color, but color just means font color as well.
I think an important thing we should mention here is that you don't have to go anywhere else to find out what color you want to use. If you just click on the colors in the Replit, you can actually just choose a color right there.
Yeah, and that's not
automatically change it for you.
It's not appearing on the stream, but after the stream, if you want to look at Replit and explore around, I don't know why it's not appearing on our stream, but our streaming provider just doesn't see it. But yeah, there's a color picker that you can choose, and it'll automatically get your RGB or hex values, whatever's appropriate. So yeah. So now when you hover, you've got this nice thing that'll change. It just tells the user, yeah, go ahead and click on this when it changes on hover. The user feels more confident of clicking on that. They're like, oh yeah, this is good. But this is a little of an abrupt transition. Like I don't really, it changes too quickly. So what you can do is add the transition declaration like so, and you can say 500 milliseconds. Now that is a bit slow, and I don't know if I like that, so you can change it to 250 milliseconds. That's my preferred one because it's nice, but notice how when I go away from the button, it changes immediately back to the default one. It doesn't transition out. So instead of putting transition in the hover statement, you can put it in the general button. And then if you run the REPL, it'll transition in and out of the hover. And it adds that extra thing that just makes your website so much more modern and clean. And it works better. Another thing which is hating me about this button is that the text feels too close to the borders. It doesn't have space to breathe. So what you can add is this padding declaration. And what that'll do is it's sort of like margins instead of adding space outside of this element, it's adding space inside. So if I were to say padding 5 pixels, then inside of this button, now there's 5 pixels on either side that separates the text from its border. And that just looks like it has more space to breathe. If I said margin 5 pixels, then what it would have done is backed away all the other elements from it by 5 pixels. But that's not exactly what I want to do here. So we have a nice button there. It's interactive. It allows the user to click on it. It's nice. It's looking good. So I feel like that's a good button. Now, how about the anchor? What can we do to make this one better? Well, first of all, the blue it's a classic, but on some websites it doesn't fit in everywhere. Sometimes you just want, the color to be the same as the text around it. So you can set the color to inherit. And let's say I had put in an anchor in this paragraph. Maybe it says, learn more, for example. Maybe I want that to be the same color as the color in the paragraph and not a blue. So by setting the text color to inherit, it'll just make it the same color as the element that it's in. If I had made another paragraph, added the class of red, and then put it in anchor element and said learn more, and then made that paragraph element in a CSS file have the color of red, that anchor element will then be red. And we'll go over classes and those selectors later, so be sure to stick around for that. Right now, that learn more is not red yet because we haven't made that paragraph element red. Also, I forgot to add the href, so might as well do that. You can add the href of hashtag in your projects, and that won't redirect the user anywhere. It'll just keep it on the page, but it's still a valid anchor element. If you're just testing things out, highly recommend doing that. It's a nice, neat little trick. Another thing that we want to do, as I talked about, is the interactivity. You want the user to know that when clicking on this, it actually does something, and you want to make the user realize that. So it's cool. Right now, it's cool. There's the underline. So thanks to like Google Docs and other word processors, most users know that, okay, that's a link. But you can add more to it. For example, you can change the text decoration, which in this case is the underline under the learn more. Maybe you can remove that. So you do your declaration, text-decoration, and you can say none. So then when I hover, boom, there's no more underline. It disappeared. It's gone. But again, that's a little bit abrupt. So we can add our transition up to 50 milliseconds. So. And now there's that nice, it doesn't apply to text decorations. Nice. Interesting little fact there. Your transitions do not apply to text decorations. So there we go. We have a button, we've got an anchor, we have an H1, we have paragraph text. Now, all of these declarations, they're all elements, but what if I have a paragraph? I don't want it black, I want it red, like as I've declared in this index.html. There's a paragraph, I've given it the class of red. Now, how can I make that paragraph red? I don't want to make this other paragraph up here red. I just want to make this paragraph red. To do that, I can't do p color red. I can't do that because then that makes all the paragraphs red. And I only want the second one red. So what I'm going to do is I can do p.red. What this dot red is the dot before text means that you want it to be a class, which is what we did. We said it was the class of red. Now, if I had said ID equals red, and ID in HTML essentially means that there's only one element with the ID of red, then you put the hashtag, and the hashtag means ID. There's other things, like if we had done color instead of ID or class, color equals red, that's not something supported by CSS. So you can put normal brackets, then you type color equals red. And that's just you just type in the attribute of whatever your element has inside normal brackets. And then, oh my goodness, it still works. I'll keep it to this attribute, but there's different selectors that you can use. Now color equals red, and then boom, there we go.
I never actually knew that was a thing.
Oh yeah, that's it's a good way to if you don't want to add classes or you just have a bunch of list of classes, or maybe this thing already has a unique attribute, you can just go ahead and yoink that attribute and put that in.
So does that work for anything then, not just colors?
It works for anything, of course, yeah. If I had set data-type, let's say you have a text chat and maybe this is a message. If your element, and then you can give this this paragraph element a data-type and then equals message, it'll still appear red because its attribute data-type equals message, and we've said that in our CSS. So
That's
there's
cool.
an interesting little fact right there. But there's more to CSS. If you have a paragraph, and then inside that paragraph you have a div, and inside that div you have an A element, and you want that to be all uppercase, you can say your text dash transform is uppercase. So that's cool, but what will that look like? Well, let's try that out. You have your paragraph. Inside your paragraph, you have your div. And inside that div, you have your, if I'm not very much mistaken, anchor element. And then we'll give that an href of hashtag like we've been doing everywhere. And saying, this is a p div a. Boom. And then there you go. So now that text transform is not uppercase. And I have no idea why. So this is a very interesting phenomenon. Why is that not uppercase?
Is it because you did p div a? Don't you have to do it like that?
Maybe an A element is just special that way.
Or maybe. No, isn't it? A div. Wouldn't that work?
I do not believe so. Yeah, no, that does not work. Why does that not work? Oh my goodness. Does anyone know in the chat? This is a little bit sad. Oh, I think I know. Hold up. If I don't know why. Okay. Well, we're going to change this to just a. We're going to remove the A because I think the anchor element is messing with it a little bit. And as my final bit, if you just do a P to a div, if you just add a space, it'll then, okay, yeah, that's not working. Why is that not working? That is very frustrating. Welcome to CSS, people. It never works. Almost never.
Never, unless you're Bucky.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Well, we can say color equals white. That should work. And if that doesn't work, why is that not working? Does anyone have any idea why that's not working? Are paragraph elements just special that way? That they don't allow you to do that?
Well, what are these brackets for then? Because I thought that they did.
So those brackets, I'm not going to try and edit the HTML because it's being mean to me right now. But what those do is the first div element in a paragraph will have the color of white. If it was just p space div, that would mean every div in that every divider in that paragraph element will have the color of white. But if you just did this, that would be the first div, the first divider in a paragraph element will have the color of white. You can also do different things like P and then nth.
Yeah. And then child.
Yeah, nth child. I haven't used that in a while. I don't think I've ever used that, but Yeah, so there are different things like that. All right. So do you want to talk about animations and variables?
Yes. So when you're building a website that has a lot of repetitiveness, you might find it's not a very good idea to just keep using color tags like this and specifying the color everywhere. An example of this is actually if my sidebar comes, sorry about that. And a good example of this is actually Replit. If we just take a quick look at Replit, we can see that if we inspect their CSS, sorry, my browser's been a bit slow today. We can see that they've got a lot of custom variables here. And that may look intimidating at first, but it's actually incredibly powerful and very simple. So let's go back over here. And let's just change the color of our paragraph. So what you want to do is in your body tag, you can define a custom variable like this. Let's say paragraph color. And then we'll set it to DDD, which is a nice shade of grey. Don't get the same color. Now, whenever we want to use this variable, we can just come down here and say var dash dash paragraph color. And whenever we have a paragraph, it will display this color.
You can also
All it's
define
doing,
variables using the root and then put in your main color, whatever, and then say. That would also work, but yeah. You can continue.
let me just see if I can close a few things. Uh-oh. Am I still live? Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. My computer's been a bit weird.
Oh yeah, relatable.
Right. So yeah, you can also do that in the root, and it doesn't matter which. I don't think it's just a matter of preference. So yeah, CSS variables aren't just for colors. You can store anything in them. So let's take this transition duration here. Transition for button duration. And then we can say, I don't know, 500 milliseconds. Then if we replace this with transition button duration, we can see that it's now 500 milliseconds. And that's useful because you can use it anywhere you want to. For example, if I do the A element, again, we've got dash dash transition button duration. Refresh. Oh, yes, as we established, that doesn't work on anchor tags. But yeah, CSS variables are extremely powerful because if you have to conform to a design system, it's an easy way to make sure you're not making mistakes. And then you also can just update the variable once and it will update everywhere in the code, in the website. For example, if I just wanted to do DD, that's too similar. I updated that to 404, you can see it automatically updates without having to change the actual paragraph tag itself. So next, let's have a look at animations. Animations are extremely powerful and they're a way to add movement to your websites so that the user doesn't need to interact with. So an animation is created with the keyframes keyword. Now, the first thing you need to do when using keyframes is to give your animation a name. So let's make our paragraph slide in. So I'm going to call this keyframe slide in. And then inside of it, there are two ways you can do things. You can do a from and then a to, or you can specify different percentages. So for example, 0%, 50%, and 100%.
And those percentages are how far the CSS is into an animation. So 50% would be halfway through the CSS animating, it'll do something. 0% through, so at the start of it, it'll do something. And 100% is at the end of the animation, it'll do something.
Yeah, so it just gives you a lot more control over it. So we want to make our paragraph slide in. So let's say from margin left of 100% and a width of 300%, and let's just move that over to margin left 0 and a width of 100%.
And to clarify, from to is essentially saying 0% margin left 100%, to is 100% margin left 0 as well. It's essentially the same thing.
Yeah. It doesn't matter which one you use. So now if we refresh the page, nothing is going to happen because we've not told the browser that we want this animation to be used. So there's an animation keyword in CSS. This animation, there are multiple different properties that you can give it. But the first one is the name. So now nothing happens, yet we've given it the name. And that is because we've not given it a duration or an iteration count. So for a duration, let's use our CSS variable again, the transition button duration. And then we also need to give it an iteration count. So that's just how many times it will run. I think that if we don't specify anything, it just does it once. And as you can see, if we refresh, it slides in from the right. And that's an easy way to add movement. But that's not all you can do with animations. Animations are extremely powerful, and there's a lot you can do with them. For example, well, I've not prepared this, so let's hope it doesn't go horribly long. I am going to comment out all of this, and I'm going to add a div. I'm going to add a div with circle. Does Emmet not work? Circle? Apparently, Emmet doesn't work.
We're in HTML. Yeah, there you go.
I know. I thought we had Emmet to.
Oh yeah, I don't think Replit has Emmets in. Yeah.
So let's make a div and we'll call it circle. So we're going to target all divs with a class name of circle, and let's give it border radius of 100%. And then let's give it a color of red. I think that will have to be background color because there's nothing inside of it. And let's give it a width of 50 pixels. And then a height of 50 pixels. If we reload, we should have a circle. Yeah, there we go. So now, let's make an animation for this. We'll do keyframes and bounce. And then we'll do 0%, because this time I want to change it when it gets in the middle. So we'll do 50%, 0%, and 100%. So to start with, we want it at a width of 50 pixels. Actually, let's use top of, I don't know, 10 pixels and right of, yeah, top of 10 pixels. Then when it gets to 50%, we want it to move down the page, so we'll have it at top of 0 pixels. Or we could actually do a bottom of 10 pixels. And then when it's at 100%, we want it to go back to the top, like that. And now let's call it inside of our circle, animation bounce, and let's make it take 3 seconds. And we'll say infinite. What infinite means is that this will always happen and it will never stop. So let's reload. And it doesn't work. What have I done wrong?
The reason why it doesn't work is because it's currently, it's currently being displayed as a block element. So top and bottom things don't apply. But yes, that should allow it to work. Oh, try absolute, not relative.
Oh yeah, absolute.
Oops.
Absolute.
And that should allow it to work, but I'm not sure.
Oh dear.
What have we done wrong here? This is what coding is like. For those of you that don't code, this is what...
yeah, especially in CSS.
Aha! It appears that the invalid property value.
Invalid property value?
That's what the Chrome dev tools are telling me.
Let's see. Where is that deprecated feature used? I don't see any deprecated. Any. Do I need to do -10 on the bottom? That wouldn't make sense.
Oh, you wrote infinite wrong.
Oh.
There's an I. There we go. That should... No, still doesn't work.
Yeah. Let's see.
The animation is... Let me see if we have to do negative pixels here. That may be the issue. The animation is being called on the element, so that is running.
Yeah. Let's try changing the background color to...
Yeah, pink. That's a good debugging method as well.
And then...
Oh yeah, no, that's running. That's running. That is working. So this is a cool way to make it fade in, fade out, or transition different colors as well. That's it looks so good. I love it.
So the issue is with my movement of it. So I'm not sure what to do. Let's see.
Try using margins.
Yeah.
Like margin top and margin bottom. Top. Yeah. That might work better.
Margin. Oh, that worked slightly.
A little bit. Progress is being made.
That's just
good. Oh.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's working. Oh, I see what it's doing. Okay, in DevTools, hover over it and then watch the margin values change. Hover over the circle and then the margin bottom is moving. So if we define a border for this, for example, a border of 2.5 px solid red, you run it. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
So that would have to be padding for that to work, because
yeah. Oh,
the border
padding.
is still the element.
Okay, that's cool.
So what you would normally do, instead of using padding, I would just wrap it inside its own div, like that. And then we've not given that div any restrictions. So class of container and container max width. Max width of 100 pixels and max height 100 pixels. Like that, and that probably won't work still because we're using margin instead.
So now we can use top, bottom. That should work.
Yes, that should work. Oh, and then and now
it doesn't work. Huzzah!
Yay!
Amazing.
Well, if you figure out how to make that work, animations are extremely powerful, and there is a lot that you can do with them. However, they are a bit finicky to use and to make work.
I mean, it's like all coding. You misspell one word or you forget one declaration, and it just dies.
Yeah.
Oh, we can use transforms with translate wise.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Saves
we
us
can.
transforms. Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see if we can quickly do this because we are almost at the time we need to finish.
Oh yeah.
Translate. Translate. Transform. Y is that how you do it? Then we do 10. Use pixels instead of that, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever actually used transform.
Yeah. That should work. If that doesn't work, I have absolutely no idea what's happening.
Can be homework for everyone watching.
Instead of translate, it's transform.
Oh yeah. And then is it translate Y?
Yeah, I think. Oh, spelling mistake. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
It's working.
It works now.
So let's just make this a bit bigger. There we go. And if we make it so. So now you can see we have a bouncing ball.
It runs off the screen.
Ah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. You have a very interesting bouncing ball. And you can do all sorts of, you can make things fade in by using opacities or visibilities. You can make things fly around. It's great, honestly. Animations are very cool.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want with those. They're extremely powerful. Let's just change that to 0, and then that can be 0 as well. And then it will bounce properly. If we do like 200. And now that's didn't work. Oh well.
Oh well.
Oh well.
But yeah, so there you go.
So before we wrap it up, there was one more thing I wanted to talk about. And if I get my sidebar back. So as a developer, you might feel you don't want to go to documentation because it means that you're not a good developer. But that's not true. You should always go to documentation. Today even, for animations, I went to MDM to make sure, well, whilst we were talking about it, because I wasn't sure why it wasn't working. So I did go to MDN in a different window. And MDN is an amazing resource for developers, especially web developers. There's loads of stuff about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and how to use it in the browser.
It's like it's, you know how everyone's always talking about how Stack Overflow is the most amazing thing. It's Stack Overflow, but instead of Q&As, it's got examples, syntax declarations,
Yeah.
how everything works, where it won't work. It tells you what browsers will make it work, what browsers won't make it work. It tells you, uh-oh, warning, that might not work. So it's amazing. And it's built by developers for developers, by the amazing guys at Firefox, well, guys and girls at Firefox, who also made the incredible grid on their dev tools that allows you to edit grids amazingly. Those same people, they are excellent at making these types of things.
Oh yeah, definitely. MDN is an amazing resource. And I'm putting the link in the chat. There we go. So for example, here you can see that the new dialog element is fully supported everywhere, and you can find out information about it and how to use it. And then how to change up JavaScript, everything you need to know, really. So let's have a look at translate Y, because that's what we're just using. It shows you this different syntax, it gives you examples where you can visually see what's going on. And you can modify these examples as well if you wanted to. So let's make that, I don't know, 200, and you can see it going on live whilst you're editing it. And then the next place I would recommend going is W3 Schools. This is also great for HTML and CSS, but also has JavaScript, Python, SQL, and many more. And it has more specific examples, like how to do a specific thing. It can teach you how to learn it, and then there's just loads of reference as well.
They also have, like, you want to make a modal, they've got your JavaScript, your CSS, your HTML, an explanation of everything does. They have exercises, so you can train yourself. You can learn all these different methods and what everything does. They've got an excellent color picker. It's really, really advanced, and they've got so many colors on that thing. They've got similar colors. They've got all your hex codes, your RGBs, so many things. Highly recommend.
Yeah, it is an amazing resource. Why is this color picker? Sorry, I'm getting distracted. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see why that's
real
good.
Cool. Yeah. Great for getting all sorts of colors.
And then Stack Overflow. We've already mentioned it. It's a great place for Q&A, so you can post a question. Then if you have a specific problem, you can get an answer. It's normally fairly quick as well because there's loads of people using it.
There's also, whenever you have a problem, if you search on Google how to store data Firebase v9, then you search that on Google. Normally the first link that appears will be a Stack Overflow link with someone with the exact same problem. And they'll normally be at least one answer that says, oh, here's a little quick code example if you want ES6, if you want anything. So they're really good at all of that.
Yeah, and then you can go there to help other people as well. It's an amazing place. And I didn't open it for some reason, but canIuse.com is also another great resource, because recently, it's a brand new thing in CSS. There's a color contrast rule. So if I want to use this, if it's loaded, yeah, here it is. You can see that it's not supported very well, though you can use it in flags in Safari, and that's the only place you can use it. But if you wanted to use a dialog element, you can see that they are much better supported, though not everywhere. So nobody uses Internet Explorer anymore, so you don't care about that. And that is definitely a really good place to go as well, for making sure that everything works across different browsers. And then finally, the last place I would recommend going is Replit.
Yay!
Yay! And today, in fact, there's loads more tutorials because it was the conclusion of the tutorial jam. You should definitely go and look at all of those, they're amazing. But there's loads of tutorials on HTML and CSS. In the documentation, there's a lot as well. If you go into the tutorial section, you can learn how to make the static site generator, and there's a lot of stuff there.
Replit's also got a crazy amount of templates to run anything. Their 100 Days of Code program is so good. It's taught by a very funny British guy called Lesson Hacker, and it really runs you through everything you need to know to get started in coding. I mean, you go to Twitter and you search hashtag 100 Days of Code, and almost every single tweet that you'll find will be just started 100 Days of Code or 10 days in 100 Days of Code. Amazing program. It's it's a wonderful thing.
So. And then if you love the Replit community so much you don't want to use Stack Overflow, you can visit the Replit Discord, which I think I might be able to show here. If I just go to
is that the Arc browser, by the way? Or
yeah, it is. So this is the Replit Discord server, and down here we've got a code help channel. So you can help other people and you can get help as well.
Normally, generally quickly, if you have a very specific problem, you just can't find Stack Overflow answers or anything. Generally, if you just paste your code or link to your REPL, either a rep or another Replit user will be able to help you fairly quickly. I've helped a bunch of people here with their CSS, mostly JavaScript questions. I've gotten bots up and running from scratch to help people. Yeah, so you'll receive very valuable help on the Replit server. So if you're real stuck, highly recommend that.
And then the other place you can go is ask.replit.com, which is the Replit community forum, and you can ask for help here as well. And there's lots of people here. And I think that's everything, unless you have anything to add.
No, not really. I mean, that was a pretty complete overview of all the resources that I use in my life. So yeah. I mean, of course, there's always Google if you're very stuck. You'll have Geeks for Geeks is another resource. I don't recommend searching on their website, but if you ever see that link in a Google search, take a look there. There'll be some good resources to see or good examples. Yeah, normally the first 3 links, Stack Overflow, W3 Schools, or MDN. So it's worthwhile to take a look there.
Yeah, definitely. And so thanks for watching, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, and have a good day, keep coding, and join Replit.
Yeah, totally not biased.